You are not poor because you earn too little money. You are poor because you are making mistakes you have never realized. I have met many people in my life, people who work harder than anyone. They wake up early, they work overtime, they sacrifice their time, even their health. But then, year after year, their finances never change. And what is the saddest thing? They begin to believe that maybe this life is not meant for them. They begin to accept that wealth is something for other people. But I want you to pause for a moment and think very slowly. What would happen if the problem is not that you are not trying hard enough? What would happen if you are moving very fast but in the wrong direction? Imagine a person rowing a boat in the middle of the ocean. He rows with all his strength, without rest, without giving up. But he does not know that his direction is drifting little by little. And then after many hours, even many years, he is not getting closer to the shore, but drifting farther away. The lives of many people are exactly like that. They do not lack effort. They lack something much more important, a correct system of thinking. I learned this very early. Wealth does not begin from your wallet. It begins from how you think, how you perceive, and the small decisions you repeat every day. And if those decisions are built on mistakes, then no matter how hard you try, the results will never change. In this video, I will share with you the 5 biggest mistakes, the mistakes that most people make but very few realize. Not to make you feel worse, but to help you start seeing what you have never seen before. Because the moment you realize your mistakes is also the moment your life begins to change. And the final mistake can change the entire way you look at your life. First mistake, you think wealth equals earning more money. I want you to imagine a bucket that seems perfect, but at the bottom there is a very small hole. You pour water in. At first you see the water rising. You feel satisfied. You think you are making progress, but then the water starts to leak, slowly, almost unnoticeably. You keep pouring more, faster, stronger. But strangely, that bucket never fills. The financial life of many people is exactly like that bucket. They keep pouring water, meaning they keep earning money. They look for better jobs. They work overtime. They take on extra projects. They believe that as long as they earn more, everything will be fine. But then, the end of the month comes, and they ask themselves, where did my money go? I have met people who earn $2,000 a month and they struggle. But I have also met people who earn $10,000 a month and they have the exact same struggles. The difference is not in the number. The difference is in the bucket. You see, wealth is not how much money you earn. Wealth is your ability to keep and grow that money. But most people have never been taught this. They grow up with a very simple belief. Earn more money equals a better life. And so they spend their entire lives chasing income. They trade time for money. Then they trade health for money. And in the end, they use that same money to try to buy back what they lost. I am not saying earning money is not important. It is very important. But if you only focus on earning money and do not understand how to manage it, then you are like someone trying to pour water into a leaking bucket. You can try harder. You can work harder. But the result will not change. I remember a man once told me, if I could just earn an extra $1,000 a month, my life would be different. I smiled and asked him a very simple question. If I gave you $1,000 right now, what would you do with it? He was silent for a moment, then said, maybe I would pay off debt and spend the rest. And I told him, then the problem is not that you lack $1,000. The problem is you have not changed how you use money. You see, money does not change who you are. Money only amplifies who you are. If you do not have discipline with $1,000, you will not have discipline with $10,000. If you do not know how to keep money when you have little, you will not know how to keep it when you have a lot. That is why many people win the lottery, and then a few years later they return to where they started, not because they lack opportunity, but because they never changed their mindset. I learned a very important lesson in my life. It is not your income that determines whether you are wealthy. It is your habits with money. You can start with very little, but if you learn to keep a portion, if you learn to invest, if you learn to let money work for you, then over time everything will change. Slowly, quietly, but surely. On the other hand, you can earn a lot of money, but if you spend it all, then you are not wealthy. You are just looking wealthy. And that is a very dangerous trap, because when you look wealthy, you will continue acting in ways that make you never truly wealthy. I want you to ask yourself one question honestly. Are you trying to increase your income, or are you building real wealth? Those two things are not the same. One is a short-term result. One is a long-term system. And if you cannot distinguish that, you will spend your whole life running without ever arriving. I used to be like that. I used to think if I could just earn more, All my problems would disappear. But then I realized the problem was not how much money I earned. The problem was how I thought about money. And when I changed that, everything began to change. Not immediately, but little by little. That is how real wealth is built. Not through big leaps, but through small things repeated every day. And if you understand this, you are already ahead of many people. But this is only the first mistake. Because even if you understand that wealth is not about earning more money, there is still another trap quietly keeping you in the same place. A trap that makes many people never even begin. Second mistake, you always wait until you have more money to start. I want to tell you about a farmer. He has a good piece of land. Not perfect, but good enough to plant seeds. The rainy season is coming, the ideal time to begin. But he looks at his land and says, I will wait a little longer. When the land is better, when the conditions are more perfect, I will plant. The next day, he goes out to the field again. The land is the same. The weather is the same. He says again, maybe next week will be better. Then next week, then next month, the rainy season passes. And do you know what happens? That land remains empty, not because it cannot grow anything, but because the farmer never started. The financial life of many people is the same. They do not lack opportunities. They do not lack ability. They only lack one thing, starting. I have heard many people tell me, when I earn more money, I will start saving. When I am more stable, I will invest. When things are easier, I will change. It sounds reasonable, right? But that is the trap, because someday usually never comes. You do not start when you have more money. You have more money when you start. I want you to pause and think. If you cannot save when you have $1,000, what makes you believe you will save when you have $5,000? If you cannot control your spending today, what makes you think you will control it better in the future? The truth is, you do not change when circumstances change. You change and then circumstances change with you. But most people wait for the opposite. They wait for life to become easier, and only then decide to become more disciplined. They wait to have more money, and only then learn how to manage it. They wait to feel ready, and only then take action. And while they wait, time keeps passing. Opportunities keep passing, and life passes with them. I once met a young man. He was smart, capable, ambitious. He told me, I know I need to invest, but I will wait until I have enough money. I asked him, how much is enough? He was silent. And that is the problem. Enough is not a number. Enough is a decision. You decide that you are ready, or you keep delaying. No one is coming to save you. No perfect moment will appear. There is only you and your choice. I learned this very early. Success does not come from big steps. It comes from small steps taken immediately. You do not need to start with a large amount of money. You do not need to understand everything. You just need to start. The first dollar you save, the first book you read, the first decision you make consciously. Those things may seem small, but they create something incredibly powerful. Momentum. When you start, you change how you see yourself. You are no longer someone who will do. You become someone who is doing. And that is a very big difference. I remember the early days of my journey. I did not have much money. I did not have many opportunities, but I had one decision. I would not wait anymore. I started with very small things. Saving a little, learning a little, changing a little. No one noticed. No one praised me. But day by day, I felt myself changing. And over time, my life changed as well. That was not magic. It was the result of starting. On the other hand, I have also seen many people never start. They always have reasons. They always have plans, but they have no action. And in the end, they have only one thing, regret. They look back and say, if only I had started earlier. But if only cannot change the past, only now can change the future. I want you to ask yourself one very simple question. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for more money, more time, or a feeling of readiness that may never come? Because the truth is, you will never feel completely ready. You can only decide that you will start even when you are not ready. And that is the starting point of all change. When you start, you create a new version of yourself, a person who does not delay, a person who does not wait, a person who takes action. And over time, that person will create a different life. But there is one thing many people do not realize. Even when they start, even when they try to change, they can still return to the starting point. Not because they lack effort, but because they are losing control in a very important place. A place that most people have never truly looked at. And that is what we will explore next. Third mistake. you do not control your spending. I want you to imagine a ship, a large, powerful ship with an engine strong enough to cross the ocean. It can go far, it can go fast, it can go anywhere. But there is one problem. That ship has no rudder. It is still moving. It is still consuming fuel. It is still passing through each day, each night, but it has no direction, and over time, it does not reach its destination. It drifts. The financial life of many people is exactly like that ship. They earn money. Even they earn quite a lot of money, but they do not control its flow. Money comes, then goes, so fast that they do not have time to understand what is happening. I have met many people who say the same thing every month. I do not understand why I always run out of money. They do not spend recklessly in the way they think. They do not buy overly luxurious things, but they still cannot keep money. Why? Because the problem is not in big expenses. The problem is in small expenses repeated every day. A meal out, an unnecessary item, a moment of treating yourself because you feel tired today. Little by little, and then at the end of the month, you look back and ask yourself, where did my money go? You see, spending is not the problem. Unconscious spending is the problem. When you do not control money, money will control you. You start living based on emotions. You buy when you are sad. You spend when you are stressed. You reward yourself when you feel you deserve it. It sounds reasonable. But if you do not control those things, they become a loop. A loop you do not notice, but it is quietly keeping you in the same place. I once met a man. He did not earn too much money, but it was not too little either. He worked hard. He was responsible. But every time he got paid, he felt a very short moment of happiness. And then he started spending, not because he needed to, but because he felt he deserved it. A good meal, a new item, a few small things to reward himself. And do you know what happened? At the end of the month, he returned to the same place. No savings, no progress, only a familiar feeling that he was stuck. I asked him a very simple question. Do you ever track where your money goes? He laughed and said, I think I know, but thinking you know is not the same as actually knowing. And that is the blind spot of many people. They do not look at their cash flow clearly. They only feel it. But emotions are not a good management tool. You need clarity. You need to know where every dollar is going. Not to control your life in an extreme way, but to take ownership of it. I learned something very important. You cannot manage what you do not measure. If you do not know where your money is going, you cannot change it. And if you do not change, the results will always be the same. I am not saying you have to live miserably. I am not saying you cannot enjoy life. But I want you to understand one thing. Financial freedom does not come from how much you can spend. It comes from how much you can keep. That is a very big difference. Because when you start keeping a portion, you start building a foundation you can rely on, a foundation you can grow. But if you spend everything, then you are building your life on sand. And when anything happens, everything will collapse. I remember the days when I started to change. I began to look at every small expense. I started asking myself, do I really need this? Does this bring me closer to my goal? At first it was not easy, because I was just like you. I also had emotions. I also wanted to enjoy. But I realized something. If I do not learn to control myself, no one can do it for me. And when I started to change, everything began to shift. Not immediately, but little by little, I started keeping more. I started feeling in control of my life. And most importantly, I started feeling freer, not because I had more money, but because I was no longer controlled by money. That is a very different feeling, a feeling you only understand when you experience it. But I also want you to understand one thing. Even if you control your spending, even if you start keeping money, you may still not go far, because there is another mistake, a more subtle mistake. It is not related to the money you earn, nor related to the money you spend, but related to how you see life. A perspective that can keep you in the same place for years, even a lifetime. And that is what we will explore next. Fourth mistake, you always blame external factors. I want you to imagine you are standing in front of a mirror. You look into it and see an image you are not satisfied with. It might be a tired person. It might be a failure. It might be someone you think life has not been fair to. And then you do something very familiar. You do not change yourself. You start blaming the mirror. It sounds ridiculous, right? But that is exactly how many people are living. They look at their lives and instead of changing themselves, they start looking for something to blame. They say the economy is bad. They say they do not have opportunities. They say their family does not support them. They say their boss is unfair. And maybe part of that is true. Life is not always easy. Not everyone starts from the same point. But here's what I want you to understand. You may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. And when you give up that responsibility, you also give up the power to change your life. I have met many people smart, capable, but they are stuck in a loop of blaming. Every time something goes wrong, they find an external reason, a situation, a person, an event. And in that moment, they feel relieved, because if it is not their fault, they do not need to change. But you see, the cost of that relief is stagnation, because if you are not the cause, then you are not the solution. And if you are not the solution, then your life will always depend on external things. I remember once I talked to a man. He had been doing the same job for many years. He was not satisfied. He felt he deserved more. But every time we talked, he always had a reason. My boss does not recognize me. This company has no opportunities. This is not a good time to change. I listened, and then I asked him, if all of that is true, then what have you done to change the situation? He was silent, because during all that time, he had done nothing. Not because he was not capable, but because he had given control of his life to external things. You see, when you blame, you feel better in the short term, but in the long term, you lose your power. I learned a very important lesson. The day you stop blaming is the day you start growing, because in that moment, you realize that no matter what your situation is, you still have choices. You can learn more. You can change your environment. You can develop yourself. Not everything is within your control, but there is always a part that is. And if you focus on that part, your life will start to change. Slowly, quietly, but surely. I am not saying this is easy. In fact, it is very hard, because it requires you to look directly at yourself and admit that there are things in my life that are the result of my choices. That is not a comfortable feeling, but it is a freeing feeling, because when you take responsibility, you also take back the power to change. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You become the creator of circumstances, and that is a very big shift. I have been on both sides. I used to blame. I used to think life was unfair. But then I realized something. Life does not need to be fair. It just needs to respond to what you do. If you change your actions, the results will change. Not immediately, but over time, and that is the only thing you really need. Not perfection, but progress. I want you to ask yourself one question honestly. In your life, how many things are you blaming on others? And if you stop and take responsibility for those things, how would your life be different? That is not an easy question to answer, but it is a question that can change your life, because the truth is, you cannot change what you do not take responsibility for. And when you start taking responsibility, you start changing. But even if you can do that, even if you stop blaming, even if you start controlling your life, there is still one final mistake. A more silent mistake, less recognized, but more powerful than all the others. A mistake that not only keeps you in the same place, but also limits you, even when you already have the opportunity to go further. And that is what we will talk about right now. Fifth mistake, you do not invest in yourself. I want you to imagine you are taking care of a tree, not just a normal tree, but a tree that has the ability to give you fruit for your entire life. But there is one condition. You have to water it. You have to take care of it. You have to be patient even when you do not see results yet. But many people do the opposite. They look at the tree and say, when it starts bearing fruit, I will start taking care of it. It sounds unreasonable, right? But that is exactly how many people treat themselves. They do not invest in skills. They do not invest in mindset. They do not invest in personal growth. They wait. They wait until they have more money, wait until they have more time, wait until life becomes easier, then they start learning. But you see, the tree does not bear fruit if you do not take care of it from the beginning. And you are the same. I have met many people, they want a better life. They want higher income. They want more opportunities. But when you ask them, what did you learn today? They stay silent because they do not think it is important. They think money is what will change their life. But they forget one thing. Money is only the result. The value you create is the cause. And if you do not increase your value, your income will always be limited. I have been in that situation. I wanted more. I wanted to change my life, but I did not have much money, and I could have chosen to wait until things got better. But instead, I chose to invest in the only thing I had, myself. I started reading books. I started listening to those who came before me. I started learning little by little. No one paid me to do that. No one forced me to do that. But I knew if I did not change myself, my life would not change. And over time, I started to see results. Not immediately, but little by little, I thought differently. I acted differently. And eventually I got different results. That is how real change happens. Not from the outside, but from the inside. I want you to understand something very important. Your income rarely exceeds your personal growth. If you want to earn more, you have to become more valuable. If you want more opportunities, you have to become someone worthy of those opportunities. But that does not happen naturally. It is the result of you actively investing in yourself. I have met people, they do the same job for 5 years, 10 years, but they do not grow, not because they are not capable, but because they do not learn more. They do what they are used to. They stay in their comfort zone. And over time, the world changes, but they do not. And then they ask, why am I not going further? The answer is very simple, because you are not growing. You cannot have a better life if you are still the same person. You cannot expect new results if you do not create new actions. And new actions only come when you have a new mindset. That is why investing in yourself is the most important investment. It does not only change your income, it changes how you see the world, how you make decisions, how you deal with difficulties. It changes who you are. And when you change, everything around you starts to change as well. I'm not saying you have to spend hours every day learning, but I want you to start. One book, one lesson, one meaningful conversation, little by little every day. Because over time, those small things will compound. And one day, you will look back and realize that you have become a completely different person, a person capable of creating more, keeping more, and building more. That is when wealth is no longer a dream. It becomes a result. But if you do not do that, if you keep delaying your personal growth, nothing else will change. You may earn more money. You may have more opportunities. But if you are still the same person, the results will always be the same. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself one question. Today, what have you invested in yourself? Not tomorrow, not when you have more time, but today. Because the truth is, the life you have today is the result of who you became in the past. And the life you will have in the future will be the result of who you decide to become starting today. That is your choice, always your choice. And when you understand this, you do not just change how you earn money, you change how you live. And when you look back at everything we just talked about, you will realize that these mistakes are not in circumstances, not in other people. They are in how you think and how you act every day. And that is also where all real change begins. I want you to pause for a moment, not to listen more, but to reflect. Not about what I just said, but about your own life. Because if you look closely, you will realize something very important. The mistakes we just went through are not unfamiliar. They are very familiar. They appear in small decisions every day, in how you spend money, in how you think, in how you respond to life. And those small things, repeated long enough, have created the life you are living today. Not one big decision, not one explosive moment, but very small choices repeated every day. So if there is one thing I want you to take away from this video, it is this. Wealth is not something you achieve in one day. It is something you build from how you think every day. You do not need to change everything immediately. You do not need to become a perfect person. You just need to recognize one mistake and decide to change it. Just one thing. Because when you change one small thing, you begin to change the direction of your entire life. And over time, those small changes will lead you to a completely different place. A place where you no longer feel stuck. A place where you begin to control your life. A place where wealth is no longer distant, but a natural result. But everything begins with a very simple moment. The moment you decide not to keep living the same way anymore. So I want to ask you one question. Out of these 5 mistakes, which one are you making the most? And more importantly, what will you change starting today? If this video made you think, take a moment to hit like to subscribe and share it with someone you know who also needs to hear this. Not for me, but because it might be a small turning point in someone's life. And remember, success is not something you chase. It is something you attract by the person you become. I truly appreciate that you stayed until the end of this video.